Hey everyone, my name is Alexandra and I'm a watercolor artist. As some of you know already, it is a tradition of mine to paint a different wreath for every season that comes. So today we're going to paint a spring wreath together. So grab your pastel paints and let's get started. Alright, so for supplies today, you guys will need 2 cups of water. I have one for clean and one for dirty water. I have a napkin for drying my paintbrush. I'm using Princeton's round brushes. I have sizes 2, 6, and 8. I have a pencil that we'll need really briefly in the beginning. For paint today, I'm using a combination of Winsor and Newton paints. I'll mention which colors in the description below. And lastly, for paper, I have 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. So the first thing that we're going to do is draw a circle on our page. So if you guys feel free to freehand this, I struggle when I'm trying to freehand my circles. So I have found a nice tape roll that I am just going to use to outline with my pencil. 2 things that you guys want to look for when you're drawing out your circle is that your circle is small enough that you leave white space all the way around on your paper. And the second thing is that you guys are not drawing too hard with your pencils. Make sure to draw really light, and if it goes on too dark, what you can do is go around and just lightly erase it so that you can still really faintly see the line. The reason for this is once you add water to your paper, you won't be able to erase the pencil anymore. So we want to make sure that the pencil is not really dark and showing through once we go on with the rest of our painting. So now we are ready to paint. For this wreath specifically, because I want it to look really nice and springy, I've chosen sort of some pastel colors that we're going to paint with. So the first thing that we are going to start with is a flower. We're gonna put it on the bottom left-hand side here, and I'm going to paint sort of a carnation type flower, but I'm not necessarily labeling all my flowers today. We're just doing a loose mixture. My goal today is to have a nice combination of colors that are just really bright and springy. So I'm mixing some of my burnt sienna paint here, and I mixed it with a little bit of my Winsor red just to add a touch of vibrance to it. Now with my number 6 paintbrush, I'm starting in the bottom left corner here, and I'm just painting little wavy lines all around each other, sort of like a cinnamon bun. This is similar to how I paint my roses, but I'm doing more wavy lines. And they're just curling all the way around each other, starting with that really light first layer. If I want, while it's still wet, I can go in with a little bit more pigmented paint and just dot it in and just sort of let it bleed into itself. All right, so we're gonna leave that for our first thing, and then we're gonna continue to work our way around. I really wanna tie this color in all the way throughout my leaf. So I'm gonna continue with my same paintbrush, the number 6, and I'm just gonna do what looks sort of like little, maybe spray roses or something like that, that's going to be sticking out. So now following along this circle where my wreath is, I am going to paint little flowers stemming out. So how I'm painting these flowers is I'm using mostly just the tip of my paintbrush down, not putting a ton of pressure, and I'm painting kind of these teardrop shapes, but I'm doing 3 of them, so it looks like it's opening up. So you can see it's rounded at the bottom there, and it opens up towards the top, meaning I'm just doing brush strokes coming up. So we'll do another one over here. So there is my pencil line. I'm gonna do another one right here. Perfect, and then we'll add another one to the outside here. So if you've watched any of my other wreath tutorials, or honestly any of my floral ones, you know that the biggest thing that I'm looking for is balance when I'm painting with florals. Florists will tell you the exact same thing when they're making a bouquet, is that you want to make sure that your colors are somewhat evenly spread throughout, so there's a nice balance when you're looking at your painting. So I might even add in one more little kind of corally flower right over here. All right, and now another very clear marker of spring is things like lilacs. So we are going to paint in some of those into our painting. So I'm going into my permanent mauve, mixing it with a little bit of my ultramarine blue just to tone down the purple to get that really nice, soft, kind of muted color. And for these flowers, we're honestly just doing a cluster of dots. So I'm gonna start near my base flower here, and with my paintbrush, I'm just dotting it in. I'm being really careful to leave white space, not fully fill it in, and I just wanna get a really nice, vibrant, beautiful cluster. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the right-hand side. You'll see that I have it skinnier at the top, and it's kind of going wider as we work our way down towards that pencil drawn circle. Now I could do another one up here. And we're just doing those really nice, simple, loose florals. Just filling in some of the space. I might do a little smaller bunch at the bottom. And I'm focusing on balancing out my colors. So you can see right now it kind of looks random because it's hard to see the pencil line in the video, but we're gonna slowly bring this together more and more. So the next thing we want to do is add in some little yellow flowers just to brighten it up. So I'm actually gonna mix a little bit of my burnt sienna with my yellow. I have quinacridone gold here. And we're gonna do just a little cluster of flowers. So I'm doing 5 tiny little petals, which is just 5 circles that are going around to create this flower shape. And we're just doing little clusters of them. So they're gonna be spread all throughout. And the key is that I'm following along that first circle that I drew, but I'm not doing a simple line all the way across my circle. I'm using it as a guide, and I'm putting my flowers to the left and to the right of that pencil line that I have drawn. So one of the reasons that I like painting in my flowers first is I find it's a lot easier, especially with the lighter colors, to fit them in, and then you can add in your leaves and branches and things after, but it just ensures that if you have too many leaves, sometimes it's harder to fit things like a yellow flower in just because they won't go on top of a green leaf very easily. So by painting them first, I know where they're going to be and I can work my greenery around behind it. Which again, as many florists do, they make sure that the flowers are the thing that are in the foreground and are standing out the most. Perfect. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're gonna do the same idea, but we're gonna paint a couple little forget-me-nots. So for these, I am gonna take my yellow paint this time and do it first, just to show where the center of each flower is. So I'm just gonna do a couple little yellow dots sort of spread throughout, and that's where my forget-me-nots are going to go. So you can see I've just spread them all the way around, and now I'm going to switch to my number 2 paintbrush and paint the petals with these. So I'm doing the same thing as I did with the daisies, where I'm just doing 5 little round petals that go all the way around that center yellow dot. And some of my yellow dots were a little bit wet still, so it's okay if the blue bleeds into it a bit. We're going for loose florals here, so I don't mind that, but because I can see that these are still wet, I'm actually just gonna pick up some of that water with my brush before I go in and paint the rest of the petals, just because I want to avoid that yellow from turning green. I'm just making my way all the way around, painting little blue ovals around the center of each flower. And I'm not too worried about how perfect it looks. Once you add everything together, you'll see how the wreath will just come together so much. Right, and we have our last one over here. Now that we've done that, we're gonna go and add the center to our daisies. So I'm gonna go in, I have some brown paint here. I just added a little bit of my blue to it to make it darker. And I'm just dotting in to the center of these flowers, and then I'm going to do a tiny dot in the center of my forget-me-nots as well. Perfect. Okay, so you can already see how much more this is coming together. It actually somewhat resembles a wreath now, so we are going to add in our leaves to really bring that shape together. So I'm going to start with my number 8 brush, and we'll add our leaves into kind of our focal point flower down here. So I'm just going to mix some yellow with my green paint here, just so I can get a nice vibrant green. And I am going to do my leaves stemming out from this flower here. So I'm going to place the tip of my paintbrush down on my page, and then I'm applying pressure in sort of a C curve shape as I pull back. And then I actually just lift up my paintbrush as I come to the flower itself. So you can see it doesn't end in a point there. It is sort of like a cut off teardrop shape. So we'll do another one down here. Just really fill in that space. So now that we've done that, I am going to switch to my number 2 paintbrush, and we are going to add some really thin stems going all the way throughout our wreath. So typically when I'm doing this, I like to start from kind of where the flowers end and work my way down towards the center. So in this case, I'll start from this daisy here, and I'm just adding thin lines as I work my way down. I like to make them look like they're weaving a little bit, so I'll add some waves to them, and just continue to feed them through the flowers all the way until we hit kind of that center point. So now we'll do the same thing on the left-hand side here. And we're just weaving through those stems all the way until we reach our center point. And now that I've done that, I want to carry these out and just make it look like really nice, bright, sort of springy branches that are nice wavy lines that are gonna fill in this white space at the top. Now this is definitely something that you guys could continue your flowers all the way through, but I often like that little bit more of a modern look that it gives when you have sort of your weight dispersed throughout. So it's nice and light at the top, and then you have all of the florals around the remainder of the wreath. So now that I've filled in those branches, we're gonna add some tiny little flowers through, or not flowers, leaves throughout. Using my number 2 brush, I'm gonna do exactly what I did for this base flower, but just a very small version of it. So the tip of my paintbrush is down, I'm applying pressure as I pull back, and I'm doing 2 sort of C curve shapes to complete my leaves. I like to focus on leaving that center line white just because it gives the illusion of the vein of the leaf without actually painting a vein in. So we just continue to do that and work our way all the way around the wreath, just filling in those gaps, creating a lot more depth and interest to our painting. I can add in some longer leaves, some smaller ones. And now I'm actually gonna go into this top part that I did with branches, and I'm not gonna fill it all in, but I'm going to fill just some of it in with leaves. So focusing on putting the tip of my paintbrush down, applying pressure as I pull back, and then lifting off to end it. I do have a tutorial on how to paint basic watercolor leaves. So if this is something that you guys are struggling with, go check out that video, and I go a lot more into depth on sort of the ins and outs of how to do this, because this is such a standard leaf that I use in all my paintings. So it's very helpful definitely to learn how to paint it. And to learn how to paint it and really use the shape of your brush to your advantage. So now I'm just gonna fill in a few more spots where I feel like there's a bit of a gap. So right around this flower here, I might add a couple more leaves just to really fill that out. All right, so now that I've done that, you can see that this has really come to life. It's looking so much more, yeah, just alive now and so much more full by adding in those leaves, really filling in those white spaces. So at this point, you guys are more than welcome to leave it as is. Honestly, I love how it looks like this with the very soft, elegant, light, very springy details. But for those of you that want, I want to show you guys, it's still beginner friendly for sure, but I want to show you guys one more step that you could take just to really, really liven up those flowers. So we're gonna start with our number 2 brush, and we're gonna start with our main flower here. I'm just mixing some more of that color that I was using. So I have my burnt sienna with my Winsor red, and this time I want it a little more pigmented. And I'm just gonna go in, sorry, just mixing my color a bit better here. All right, so I'm gonna go into this kind of carnation-y flower that I painted, and I'm overlapping some of those petals that I painted, but I'm not fully filling them in. So I'm doing a thinner line, and I'm just gonna do wavy lines all the way around my flower. So this is just gonna give them an extra layer of dimension that they didn't have before. So it's a super simple detail to add. You're just doing kind of little like S shapes or little wavy lines to just really bring out the color in the flower. So now, continuing with the same color paint, we're gonna go into our little red flowers, and we're just gonna paint really thin lines following the general shape of the flower, but I'm not filling it in. I'm making sure to really let the light red show through while still making these stand out a lot more. So you can see just a simple little detail adds so much vibrance to the flowers. So now let's go into our daisies. And you guys can see already what a quick little step it is to add these details to our flowers, but it's gonna make such a difference in your overall painting. So I'm going into my yellow for the daisies. Using my small paintbrush, I essentially am just adding a more pigmented version of the yellow paint that I was using, just because I want these to look more vibrant. Now this is something where the yellow that I have specifically is definitely leaning more towards an orange tone. So if you guys want brighter, more yellow daisies, then just think about that when you're choosing what colors that you're painting with. But I don't mind this. This gives them a nice soft look, but it just helps them to stand out by adding that bit of detail. So my forget-me-nots, I am going to leave them as is just because I really like the softness of the blue, and I know if I add too much detail they might start kind of overpowering the rest of the painting. But for our lilacs, we can go in. I have a mixture of this kind of purpley blue on my palette over here. So I'm just gonna mix a little bit more of that, and where I've already dotted in color, I am just adding a second layer, but focusing on letting some of that first layer really show through. So not crazy detail, we're just jotting in one more layer to the purple. So these tiny little details that you guys can add to your paintings are just gonna bring more interest to them, especially when you're looking at it. It's such a simple touch, but it makes it look like there's just been a whole other level added to it. So we're working on our last one here, and just dotting in that color. Perfect. Okay, so the last detail that we're going to add is just a little bit more dimension to our leaves. We're not doing this addition to every single leaf, just a few of them. But I want you guys to go into your yellow paint, and we're gonna use a glazing technique here. So I'm just putting yellow on my brush, and I'm going to paint directly over top of some of my leaves. So I'm very intentionally not doing all of them because I want to add that really nice vibrance to the leaves, but I just wanted to differentiate so that there is some variation in color and it's not all the same tone. So this step, definitely not necessary, but you guys could choose if you want to add this to specific leaves, if you want to add it to specific branches. I'm just spreading it throughout because I find that it gives a really neat effect when you're looking at the painting and you just see those leaves pop out at you, and that little addition of interest to your painting. All right, so we're gonna do maybe one or two more. And then that is all we have for our spring wreath tutorial. Thank you guys so much for following along. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Alexandra Victoria Studio. This helps me so much as I'm making these tutorials. Also, I love to see what you guys are painting. If you followed along, please do share it with me on Instagram at Alexandra Victoria Studio. I absolutely love to see progress that my students are having, so make sure to share it. Leave a comment below what you want to learn next, and I'll see you next time.